Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. I've been off for a while because I have been sick as a dog. I'm back to a little closer to normal now, and instead of covering an anniversary today, I'm going to cover a death that I just learned about. A researcher sent me a death certificate to protect the woman's name because there was never any public coverage of this. I redacted the death certificate, which I link to in the story below, and I gave her the pseudonym Florence Dorland. So Florence was a 21-year-old black woman, never married. Her occupation was listed as babysitter, and she lived in Granville County, North Carolina. She came into the care of Dr. Robert E. Ziff Jr. on December 19th of 1970, and at some point he admitted her to Duke Hospital in Durham, North Carolina, where she died on January 4th of 1971. Now, her cause of death is listed as cerebral anoxia, that's no oxygen to the brain, due to hepatorenal failure, which is that her kidneys and liver gave out, due to abortifacient. The manner of death was identified as homicide. How the injury occurred is induced abortion, and the injury occurred on December 9th, 1970 in Richmond, Virginia. So exactly what happened with Florence? Let's look at some of the circumstances and see what we can figure out. First of all, we have the legal status of abortion. Now, both North Carolina and Virginia followed the American Law Institute model abortion law in 1970, which said a licensed physician is justified in terminating a pregnancy. Notice that they were already weaseling with terminating a pregnancy. If there is a substantial risk that the continuance of the pregnancy would gravely impair the physical or mental health of the mother, or that the child would be born with grave physical or mental defect, or that the pregnancy resulted from rape, incest, or other felonious intercourse. So thus, whichever law was on the books would have had no impact on whether Florence traveled out of state or not. And we can look at laxity in approving abortions. So North Carolina, where Florence lived, had an abortion ratio of 7 hospital abortions, which is where most abortions were performed at that time, 7 hospital abortions per 1,000 live births, while Virginia, where Florence's abortion was perpetrated, had nearly double the abortion ratio with 13 per 1,000 live births. Now, North Carolina didn't provide a breakdown of the justification for abortions, but Virginia did, with 357 of 508 abortions, or 70%, done for maternal mental health. Somebody's setting off fireworks. So geographically, it seems like she probably was more likely to be able to get an abortion approved in Virginia than in North Carolina. Distance. Okay, it's about 122 miles, or about a 2-hour drive from the area where Florence lived to Richmond, Virginia. But Florence had several much closer metropolitan areas to choose from: Durham, where she eventually died, Raleigh, and Greensboro. So it seems like if she was going to go with an illegal abortion, she had more metropolitan areas to choose from closer to home. So it seems like it would have been more likely to be able to find a criminal abortionist close to home. The cause of death indicates abortifacient rather than surgical abortion. Now, it seems really unlikely that Florence would have driven nearly 2 hours to purchase an abortifacient, consume it, and then drive home. It seems more likely that if she was going to have some kind of abortifacient compound that she drank, she would have driven 2 hours to get it and then come home and taken it. But the location of the injury indicated an unidentified building in Richmond, not in Florence's home. So whatever the abortifacient was, it was administered in Virginia. Now, the manner of death was homicide, which means that either the abortion itself was patently illegal, or it was technically illegal, but it was performed in such a reckless way that Florence's death would have been predictable. And yeah, you've seen that in a lot of safe and legal abortions. Again, the location of the injury. The location was given merely as building, nothing more specific like a doctor's office, clinic, hospital, or residence. If Florence had undergone a legal abortion performed recklessly, wouldn't the doctor who filled out the death certificate have given a more specific location, that it was in the doctor's office or in a hospital or a clinic? And then we look at the most likely perpetrator. Now, Planned Parenthood's medical director, Mary Calderon, concluded in Illegal Abortion as a Public Health Problem, published in 1960, that about 90% of pre-legalization abortions were done by doctors. And Nancy Howell Lee, who did independent research, published in 1969, concluded that 89% of pre-legalization abortions were done by physicians. So there's about a 90% chance that whoever perpetrated this abortion was a doctor. Now, had Florence undergone the abortion in New York rather than in Virginia, I would have immediately pictured that she traveled to a freestanding, well-advertised, openly operating clinic, and a doctor administered some kind of chemical to start the abortion. Either a saline injection, which is how Anita Rowe and April Rowe ended up dying. The doctor injected the saline outpatient and then sent her home. The prostaglandin was used for outpatient abortions. Or there were compounds similar to, let me try to pronounce this correctly, Leuenbach's paste, which was a popular abortifacient among both legal and illegal practitioners for a while, and then sent her home. So the cause of death being abortifacient rather than surgical or therapeutic abortion kind of indicates to me that it was probably some kind of compound. Most doctors were not brazen enough to perform a saline or prostaglandin abortion. These are late second trimester abortions. These are 17, 18 weeks and later. Most doctors would not want to risk their reputations having a dead patient doing this outpatient. They would do it in a hospital, even if they didn't care that much about the woman. And but the abortifacient paste would be much easier to use in a doctor's office, and you just kind of could monitor her better on an outpatient basis. So it seems that the most likely abortifacient wouldn't have been something she would consume, but some kind of abortifacient paste that was administered by a doctor. Now, it's most likely to me that Florence heard through the grapevine about some doctor who was willing to administer this abortifacient paste, which, if you follow the link below, it was considered a safe method of performing abortions even at that time when people were kind of squeamish about doing them outpatient. But the degree of disapproval that Florence's doctor indicated by identifying the manner of death as homicide might have led Florence to not name who did it or where, for fear of repercussions for that person. I've talked before about how dying women would protect their abortionists. It seems to me they'd have more loyalty to other women and not want them to end up dead, but I don't lean toward abortion as a solution to life's problems, so I probably have a very different mindset that way. So I think that's the most likely scenario for Florence. It's very, very sad. I wish that she had gotten hooked up with somebody who could have helped her safely have her baby instead of wind up dead.